Word spread around about the Black Shook, and even attracted hunters and trackers from the mainland to hunt down the hound. But they were shooed away. Many cryptozoologists were also fascinated by it, and don't even get me started on how the media responded to all of it. It was bad business for the narrow gauge line all around. But there was one question all the engines were questioning, and even the vicar. Whose wrongdoing summoned the murderous beast? As the days became slower, and every so often one of the engines were called out for work. On another hand, many workers were angered that their paychecks were being reduced, and held a strike in front of the controller's house. The controller was drinking coffee in his office when he looked outside and saw all the picket signs. His butler came in. "Excuse me, sir, are you going to address the workforce out there?" "What exactly are their demands?" "They're complaining about wage cuts." The controller's eyes widened. "Pay cuts? We haven't cut anyone's pay. The wages stayed the same." "Well, that's not what those men out there are saying." The controller stepped out of his house and confronted the onslaught of angered workmen. He took all their insults and jeers with a grain of salt. Please settle down now. Can we settle down now? Please, settle down. I know you're infuriated by the wage cuts, but there's a strange thing going on here with our system. I haven't authorized any reduction in wages, nor have I approved of any." The workmen were now confused. "Then who's taking that chunk out of our checks?" "I don't know. Until we get to the bottom of it, I will be personally signing and mailing checks directly to you," said the controller. Meanwhile, at the sheds, the vicar came to greet the little engines. "Have any of you heard the news?" "What news?" asked Sir Handel. "Something's fishy going on with the workmen's wages. There's a large chunk of pay missing from each of them." "That's bad news," said Peter Sam. "But good news for us," said Skarloey. "Why?" they all asked. "Well, if we find out who's stealing that chunk of the paychecks, maybe the Black Shook will disappear. Vicar did say he's summoned by wrongdoing. The sooner we find this guy, the safer our passengers and us will be." "Well, we gotta get to work then," said Rheneas. "Lads, the police just called. Another body just turned up. Rusty, you better get on it." Meanwhile, in an unknown location. One little droplet at a time, and the honeypot is full. Look at all this loot, and with that dog running around causing a panic, no one will ever suspect me. I'll be long gone by the time they figure it out. If they do figure it out, said a stranger. Rusty was a different sort of engine these days. He began to feel numb. This is the 5th time he was called out to tracks to bring crime scene units to a killing. Each one got more brutal and gruesome than the last. He started to go noticeably quiet whenever he returned to the sheds. The other engines had no clue how to help their friend, though. They just wanted these dark days to be over. Rheneas and Skarloey were also called out to duty. They began to bring zoologists out to each crime scene area. Skarloey was out by the picnic grounds one morning, and many zoologists eagerly took plaster casts of the large paw prints made by the Black Shook, and took samples of the black shaggy fur left behind by the creature. He then noticed smoke coming up from the tops of the trees. He found it strange since many of the citizens were locked down back in the village. That's funny," he said. "What's funny?" asked his driver. "No one should be out camping at this time." "What are you talking about?" "Look above the trees. That looks like campfire smoke." You're right, old boy. Hey, officer!" his driver called to a nearby cop. "Yes? Jump in the cab. There's something strange going on. There's campfire smoke coming up from over the trees." The cop, interested by the smoke, jumped in Skarloey's cab, and Skarloey trundled down the line. They stopped a couple 100 yards up the track, adjacent to where the smoke was seen. "Wait here," said the cop as he stepped out of Skarloey's cab, off the tracks and into the woods. He walked in about 200 feet from where Skarloey was, and gasped when he saw a campfire smoldering, a makeshift tent, a shovel and a pickaxe nearby, and a large man-made hole in the ground. The cop shined his flashlight into the vacant hole and was shocked by what he saw. Inside were duffel bags. Throwing on a pair of gloves, he unzipped one of them and found stacks upon stacks of cash. Needless to say, the campsite was soon overrun by police. The duffel bags were dusted for fingerprints, and a controller arrived with Rusty to observe the investigation. "Well, at least we found the missing wages," said the controller. "Indeed," said a detective. "How much was stolen in total?" asked the controller. £500,000, replied the detective. "Now, other than you, I do have to rule you out. Who else would have access to those paychecks?" The controller thought for a moment. "The director of the bank in town, and... No, it can't be him," the controller said, shocked. "Who?" asked the detective. "Bernard, my butler." "Skarloey, to my mansion now!" shouted the controller. Yes, sir." Skarloey rushed back to Croven's gate. The controller and 2 officers stormed into the home. "Bernard Aberdeen, come out here now, you are under arrest." The house was secured. Bernard was nowhere to be found, though. "Where would he go?" asked the detective. "My guess is he would go back to where he stashed his loot," said a cop. They hurried back to Skarloey, who took them back to the site. Rheneas followed suit with a coach full of policemen. It was late at night by the time they got out to the crime scene. They all searched with flashlights. Suddenly, Skarloey caught sight of a shadowy figure running through the woods. "Over there!" he said, and charged down the tracks. "Bernard Aberdeen, you are wanted for embezzlement. Surrender peacefully," said officers. Bernard eventually stopped running and stood on the tracks, his face lit up by the lantern on Skarloey's buffer. All the police drew their firearms, pointing them at Bernard. "It's over, Bernard. Surrender peacefully." chuckled Bernard. "My surrender will be anything but peaceful," he said with a wicked smile, as growling echoed from the darkness. Red, glaring eyes appeared behind Bernard. "I'm unsure if you met my canine companion." The black shook appeared snarling from the night sky. "Steady, boys," said the detective. "Good Lord, it's the demon from hell." Bernard said with a wicked cackle. "Go on, attack!" Bernard shouted at the hound, but the hellish dog didn't obey. "I said attack!" The black shook instead snapped at Bernard. Hey, I'm the one who summoned you. You're supposed to obey my orders. Now heel!" The black shook roared at an otherworldly roar before lunging at Bernard. No! Before he could be slashed, the ghost dog dissipated into a black smoky cloud and entered Bernard's body through his mouth, causing him to gag, choke, and convulse on the ground. "What the hell is happening?" said a cop. Bernard continued gagging and shaking until he finally stopped. All the smoke entered his mouth, leaving Bernard a cold shade of blue. His eyes rolled back into his skull, and his mouth agape. A gurgling noise escaped from him as he went cold. The police, Skarloey, Rheneas, and their drivers didn't know what to think, nor what to say. They were just in shock. Bernard was dead. "Any theories on this, Sarge?" asked the cop. "None that comes to mind," he replied. "I think I know what happened," said the vicar. The hellhound is summoned by one's own sin. but punishes the innocent, causing hysteria and satisfying a vacant bloodlust. Once the sinner has gotten everything he desires, he outlives his usefulness to the demon, and the demon comes to consume the soul of the sinner and take him back to hell. I've read eyewitness accounts dating back to the 1500s, all describing similar patterns. "So, in no way is this beast completely gone?" asked Reneus. "No way, no how. It'll return to the summation of another sinner to satisfy its bloodlust once more, however long that might be." In the following weeks, the village of Croven's Gate came together and held a candlelit vigil for those who fell victim to the Black Shook. Bernard Aberdeen was properly buried in an undisclosed location, despite his fiendish scheme, and the fear of the Black Shook eventually moved on, but that didn't stop its legacy from causing problems. For a long time, hunters, zoologists, and supernatural enthusiasts frequent the line, and it rubbed a lot of citizens the wrong way, that this is all they were visiting for. They all felt it was disrespectful towards the innocent victims of the demon. Work continued as usual, but the effect lasted a long time, until a lot of the narrow gauge engines eventually moved on from the ordeal.